Holy smokes, I was running late. I apologize. No one's on right now anyway, so I'm really just talking to myself. But I am a man of my word. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to make sure that's when I'm starting. I just sent Evan the link, so he's going to be jumping in to just to us being live. Welcome to another week of the Unfound Guys Facebook Live, where we work on our world, we create things. Evan joins us, and you get to come and ask questions. My name is Dillon. I apologize for being so late. I'm also saying that to Evan. Evan, I'm sorry. I still wanted to start exactly at 4 p.m. Eastern.
All right.
How are you? How are you, Evan?
It's been a week. I'm good, though. Thank you.
Oh, I actually did realize things I wanted to start with today. So I do have questions to start with for you. If you're joining us, feel free to ask any questions you might have. I'm putting this in our Facebook group now. Let's make sure and add it to the group. Boom. Come hang out. That's me typing and talking, and you might be reading that. How wild is that? I wanted to start with a question for you, Evan.
Answer.
Top 10 things you like about San Francisco. Go.
I see what you're doing there.
Top 10 things.
Oh man, I wish I were better at talking and painting at the same time. Top 10 things. I mean, I don't know. Golden Gate Bridge is nice. Muir Woods is nice, but now you need a reservation to go there.
So I'll take that out.
Yeah, take that out. Doesn't count anymore. There's some good food.
Good food.
Really
we got
good food.
Yeah. We're really tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. I really need to.
You can get back to me. That leads me to my second question, and then we'll go in. My second question for you is: what is one thing you've heard good about Port Huron, Michigan?
Nothing.
Oh, come on. What's one good thing you've heard about of Michigan in general?
Definitely lower cost of living, according to Dillon.
Weird.
Everything I've heard about Port Huron, Michigan comes from Dillon. So people of Port Huron, if I disparage you, it is only because Dillon has done so.
That's interesting, Evan, because you couldn't name all the things good about San Francisco, but it was pretty quick to name what you liked about Michigan and Port Huron. Interesting.
Yeah, well, interesting. I'm not really the robo-taxi kind of guy.
Dillon looks up robo-taxi. What am I missing now? No, everybody, welcome to Dillon Gives Evan Shit every other Friday, and he draws things. We don't have Matt today. Matt is at ACL in Austin, so wish him luck. Is that like a music conference or a music convention thing? ACL, have you heard of that?
No idea. No, I've heard of tearing one.
If you've heard of it, let us know in the comments. If you're here watching, say hi in the comments. Where are you? What path are you walking in Bestunia? And if you don't know, feel free to ask what that means. Today is a day where we do Q&A. We talk about the projects we have in the works, which currently Evan, Matt, and I, as a team, all three of us, have a bunch of things in the works. We have comics that we're working on for our main story. An animated series we're talking with a Hollywood screenwriter for. Dillon is staying in the positive when he speaks on that. Putting sequences together for. We have a children's book, which we're working on today. We have an origin novel and a young adult fantasy novel that Matt has created that you can read for our new Kickstarter. We just finished up a Kickstarter. What am I missing? TEDx Talk. We're working on as a team. Am I missing anything, Evan?
Tabletop. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, audio drama.
Oh yeah, that's
audio
a big
drama.
One.
So if you have any questions, like what the heck is that, or how'd you get into that? Feel free to ask. If not, I'm going to ask Evan questions because today's a bit different. Today, Evan is not doing a typical drawing that he does. What would you? When I say typical, Evan, I'm going to continue to tap you in for your vernacular here. I say your typical drawings. What type of drawings are those?
So I would call them graphic line and color, and they're only typical for you. To be
Correct.
honest, most of the time I paint.
Oh, okay. So this is actually this is your typical.
The goal of the end product here is my typical. This process is not. I'm usually not painting with a monkey looking over my shoulder the whole time. No offense to anyone out there,
Oh,
but
you're good.
yeah, so we're kind of going from a very loose concept here, and I'm gonna see what comes out of it. Hopefully, it'll be fun. Um, trying to capture a little bit of Becc and Ceith outside of their usual element.
Yes.
So yeah.
What is? It's the first question that I have. What is different from what I'm used to? Your line drawings, right? Line and color
Yeah.
drawing, to painting. Because here's what I know about line and color. It's like you start like if you take it down to the bones, you're like I start with specific shapes, right? And then I kind of like use those and add on to those as I go. Is it the same when you're painting?
So, I mean, any kind of image making, especially things that have characters and elements that need to be like designed for appeal or some kind of narrative purpose, they all start from design, and that usually means shapes and shape language and things like that. What distinguishes what I would call graphic line and color from a painterly finish is really just what most would refer to as rendering. So that's what some people take to be shading, but I kind of take issue with that characterization. So it's really when you see things like color invasion, and they're not just flat blocks of color make constituting a form or a figure. That's really where things start getting more painterly. And one of the biggest distinctions is definitely the presence or lack of line. So things like comic art, frequently use, there's heavy use of line work. And that's very much an illusion. It's trying to capture or indicate form using line that
Yeah.
doesn't really exist in the real world. I mean, you look in the real world and things are not really surrounded by a thick black or dark brown outline. That's not something that we actually see. That's not something that is really out there. And so that line kind of serves as an indicator of, okay, here's where one form ends and another one begins. Whereas when it comes to painting, there's different degrees of realism, of course, and stylization in painting. But in general, when you take line out of the equation, you're kind of relying on edges of tone to indicate form. Like there's nothing to really tell us that this is the bridge of or the top of
Right.
Keith's nose, except that line of pink, all of which will be very much refined more before this is done. But that line of pink, that shift in color, is what indicates that light is hitting this plane differently than it is hitting this plane or this plane underneath his nose.
Do you
And that's
feel
really just like value there. Once you bring in color, it expands the conversation. Go.
welcome back to another week of values.
Yeah.
Shout out Casey. It's funny as you were talking. I wish I like. Oh, I don't know if anyone saw. I brought my hand up to look at my arm and be like, yeah, there's no line there. It's like I needed to do that. Do you feel someone getting into drawing? They want to make drawing their mastery as much as possible. Does painting digitally, let's at least say, tend to come after like really knowing, because it's like you still have the lines in here, right? So does painting tend to like
Mm-hmm.
be put on top of like learn drawing first and hard lines first, then learn painting?
Yeah, in general, like you would want to start with drafting, drawing. That's always it's going to be the best source of observation for how forms behave, how light behaves, how they interact with each other under different circumstances. All of which can inform things like graphic, for comics, whether even if you're drawing cartoon characters, that kind of intuition can really help inform how a design works and how successful it can be. And certainly something like painting, if you're aiming for realism or even like controlled, stylized realism. I mean, these are not realistic characters. I wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
that we're going for realism, but we're giving a more realistic or naturalistic treatment to how light is falling on them,
Is
essentially.
Is there, and you said this is what you would prefer to do, right? And I promise, Evan, I'm going to talk about other things, so you're not
It's
constantly
all right.
answering questions to. You said this is what you prefer to do. What's the draw for you to do painting over line and color, graphic line and color?
I don't know. Prefer is maybe not how I would describe it. I really like doing both. I like doing all kinds of stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, if I could like sit down and say I'm just going to make some art for myself, I would probably start out by drawing and maybe design a character and try to go extra fun with it and push the shapes. But ultimately, at some point, I would be like, I want to paint this now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe it would be a portrait. I think it's painted portraiture that really kind of gets me going, or fills my bucket, as Dillon would put it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And do you like when you say paint your portrait? Because now I'm gonna the layman in me is gonna speak. Because when I think of portrait, I think of like realism, and looking at a lot of your stuff on your website, irrelevant Evan art,
Evan Winston Art,
Evan
or
Winston art,
drawingsandragons.com.
or drawingsandragons.com. Make sure you look it up. A lot of what I see is fantastical, right? It's like it's a lot of fantasy shifts to it. When you say
Yep.
portrait, does it mean something different than when I'm thinking portrait of like, oh, you could draw a picture of my dad?
I mean, yeah, that's true. There's a lot of drama that can come from, portraiture, as you might imagine. In the White House, there's a painting of all the different presidents,
Mm-hmm.
or portraiture in like an old stodgy mansion where all the heads of household have stood for portraits, and some of that
And
constitutes.
they're never happy. You ever notice
They're
that?
never happy. That's real old world charm.
Yeah.
That some of that constitutes the most amazing painting, as far as technical painting that exists. I mean, John Singer Sargent is just someone whose work you could look at forever.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And there's nothing, of course you do. There's nothing inherently negative to portrait, for portrait's sake. But yeah, there's no reason why those sensibilities can't be applied to non-realistic figures. I mean, this is portraiture, it's in pencil, but I mean, it's a fairy. Right. There's nothing realistic about the subject, or where this subject will be as far as IP or anything like that. But yeah, a lot of the decisions, the design decisions in terms of rendering her or designing her facial structure, or pushing her facial structure to feel a little bit more, I don't want to say fairy-like, but I don't know, elfin featured. All of these decisions are still grounded in very realistic approach to portraiture. And even when you decide to break away from realism very deliberately, you still need to know what the rules are in order to know how to break them. I don't know if I have any other great examples.
So then would you say, just to make sure I got this right,
but I don't know.
Portraits would be more realistic, correct? And then paintings would be other things.
My screen freeze? My screen froze.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let me just reset my stream.
But the last question being then portraits are more realistic when you say the word portrait, correct?
Like they don't have to be.
Wouldn't it be a portrait?
No, there's a lot going on in this image. That's amazing. And honestly, I don't know how far I'm gonna get, but I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Evan critiques himself.
All right, here we go.
Times an hour before you see his final work, and you're loving it. Go ahead.
No, that's it. Did you have another question?
I do have another question that's complete tangent. And if you're watching, make sure you tell us hi. Make sure you ask any questions. What's he drawing? What are the callings? It looks like you're drawing both Ceith and Becc, and I am curious. Have you figured out what Ceith's mature calling looks like yet? For the children's book, did you freeze? Can you hear me? You son of a biscuit!
I'm here. I'm back. What'd you say?
Have you figured out? I know we have like a light over Ceith's shoulder. Have you personally figured out, as you work on the children's book, what Ceith's adult calling looks like?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, I think so. We're they're both here. The lines are very loose
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I don't
Well, that's
need
why I didn't know if
I
like
don't
you were
need
just like, let me start with this, and I'll figure it out as I go, or if you already had an idea.
no, yeah, I definitely have a solid idea of what his adult calling is going to look like.
Can I ask a question then on it?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
you
for those
can.
that are watching and are curious, we shifted Keith's calling.
Man, did
Beck's
he need
calling.
eyebrows?
Tell me about it. Beck's calling started has stayed the same. Working with Beck's parents, Tyler and Kristen, very much like cat-like, but like water cat, where it's got three tails that kind of act as oars, but it's more of the bulky, the powerful one of the two. Right? It's Beck the Brave. And Keith's calling was going to be more of the travel version. Yeah, there we go. Beck's calling. Beautiful. We're gonna make sure we show that. I love the imagination tint you put on that. Keith's calling for the longest time was going to be part owl, part phoenix, and we were going to have like this bird travel portion of it. But being Keith's dad, we've realized that Keith now has a favorite animal, and he says it all the time, and it's a duck. He'll yell duck. He loves migration on Netflix. Have you watched that yet, Evan?
I have, yeah.
Oh, by the way, Kristen, huge fan of the big water cat. Beck's mom's here. No pressure, Evan. Um, but he loves migration. It's all that he watches. Like the only screen time we give him is on the weekends. He watches migration, and or if he's hanging out with me. And we're like, we have to change this calling from like an owl to a duck. And as you know, with the boys, they have like their cute pets, pet duck, pet cat, but then they turn into these awesome creatures. We saw that awesome cat of Beck's grown, but how do you make a duck cool? Is my question for Evan.
I'll let you know when I answer it.
Oh,
No, I mean you can't make a duck feel like a grown water tiger with three tails. It just doesn't work. It's just, I mean, if there's a solution to that, I don't know what it is. If anyone figures it out, let me know. But I think there can be a lot to like about an oversized mallard. Essentially,
yeah,
there's going to be a lot to like about Keith's calling, and given that his persona is Keith the Curious and not Keith the Brave or Keith,
right.
something that has a little, that calls for a little bit more physicality. There's a lot that you can do with that
Yeah, no,
without
it does
feeling
make sense.
like, oh, this is just a dumb big duck,
I,
big dumb duck. So yeah, I'm happy with B once you see it, but
I'm excited. I'm excited to see. And you
see where
are
it
right.
goes.
Like I think there's the philosophy
Oh
of
my
that.
god.
Yeah, you're slow again. But I'll keep talking. And if you hear me talk, you just don't talk yet. I think there is something to say in like the philosophy of a calling too, is as a calling matures for someone, as we like lean into something, a mastery or something we really like, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be super cool, right? Like you kind of hit it on the head when you're like, it's Keith the Curious, right? So as he gets more curious, this calling gets, more and more mature. That doesn't have to mean more and more badass. That's it grows into its fullest potential. Um,
Right.
okay, but I have a question for when it grows. Did you decide to go with a long neck or a short neck? Or I'll say a regular
Short.
neck. Short. Okay. Well, then I'm
Regular
very
then.
curious. I'm very curious what this turns into then. Because in my mind, I'm like, maybe he went long neck as it gets older. Whew.
Duck dragon.
Duck, that's what I'm thinking. Duck dragon, or like maybe that's where it turns more goose. I also think of Pooh and Yu Yu Hakusho, which of course, do you know Yu Yu Hakusho, Evan?
No.
By
No.
Togashi, but of course I don't. So you're still a nerd in your own capacity. While you get this set up, I am going to present. I want to show an update that we have for anyone that watches live or anyone that's watching on the replay. We consistently run Kickstarters, and these Kickstarters is to help sponsor imagination and creativity in our generation and the next. You can get comics when you. The cool thing to know about a Kickstarter is it's not a GoFundMe. You're not just giving us money for us to build it. We give you rewards in return for what you give us, but it does allow us to front load the funds needed to grow this, right? So you're going to get comics, you're going to get children's books, you're going to get posters, you get stickers, you get a bundle of coloring pages for some. You can create your own calling, or you can sponsor a young kid's calling. Whether a young kid that you know, your kid or your niece, nephew, a friend of yours, or a kid that we have met in our classroom visits. We've now met over 500 kids. We have 100 or so calling creations from these kids that like really love what we do. Some people though do not know how Kickstarter works. If you're watching this and you're like, I don't know how Kickstarter works, I'm not starting a Kickstarter account, that's normal. So what we have done, I'm going to share my screen here, is if you check out our website, unfoundadventures.com, this is the home. It's going to talk to you about all of the callings we've created, the short stories we've done, how much we've raised, how many copies we sold of our books. All those are going up, by the way. And we also want to add 27 classrooms we have now spoken with. Over 550 kids we have now worked with. We'll be adding that as well. But if you come to the top, of course, you can purchase comics from our store, delivered right to your house. My lovely wife, Morgan, does the shipping. Morgan, the matriarch. But if you click the button Bestunia, you actually get to come to this page that gives you a map of our world with a bunch of little pins, location pins. Some are green, some are maroon outlined, right? And if you come in here and click any of the green ones, it's going to bring up a new page, which unfortunately you can't see right now. Dang it. Where it actually shows the calling that we've created. However, there are going to be callings that we add here that have yet to be created. And what we do is bring you down to a kid who has drawn a calling. This is Emily's Clarice. We have wrote a short story on what Emily and Clarice do in the world of Bestunia, and we give you the option to sponsor. So you can now go to our website and say, oh my gosh, what a cool concept. I want to bring that kid's calling to life. You can sponsor this calling, add it to your cart, and we will make sure we bring that kid's calling to life. So it's a fun, interactive way of seeing what we've already created, as you can see right here, and what is in the works for us to create, which you'll see right here. And you have the ability to sponsor. Feel free, because kids love that. If I had a say on which one should come next, it's Aubrey's Unipig, which is absolutely incredible. If you ask when she did her worksheet, we asked like, what does it look like? Right, it's one of the things because they can either write out what it looks like or draw it. Well, she obviously wrote after she drew, and she wrote, "It's a unicorn and a pig," and that's all she put. So if you want to bring Aubrey,
what else do you need?
It's very true. I mean, I don't know why I asked. Well, in my opinion, I ask because some kids want to write this rather than draw it, but you really don't. All you need is this. If you want to see this cute little thing come to life, feel free to go to unfoundadventures.com/gallery. Which way is the / Evan? It's /
to the right.
So that means it goes from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock rather than 11.
It's under the question mark.
Boom. Yeah. / gallery. Back to your local broadcast as Evan draws things.
Oh man, it's a sad day when your mobile hotspot is faster than the house's Wi-Fi. Sorry for the connection issues all.
See, that's why I was able to help by switching over to our website as you did this. Are you in?
Oh yeah, nice distraction game.
It's what I'm here for, man. I'm thinking on my toes is what I am designed for. Also, if you're in, you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Even if the question is, who the heck are you guys? There's no such thing as a bad question, unless I'm asking Evan, which I will continue to do until you ask a question. Casey, perfect for this area right now. Evan, when you first got into, because a lot of what you draw is in the fantasy realm, right?
Yeah.
When you first got in to drawing fantasy, what was it for? Was it for like D&D compatible games, or was it for something else?
That's a great question. No, my first professional commission or job was actually a mascot for a toy store. So it was none of those things.
What toy store?
Um, oh man, I don't even remember anymore. But
First
the
commission.
mascot's name was Lepe the Leopard. Yeah, it was a good. He was a good client. He came back a lot. But I wonder if he's still in business. I should reach out, Oscar. Anyway, that was my first commission. My first real professional fantasy art commission, if you will, was let's see. Oh, it was for a book. It was for a book anthology, and that was a market in which I was pretty active for a number of years. Ultimately, ended up starting a small publishing house with a bunch of other artists, where we would an anthology of our own art every year. So we would have first 20 and then ultimately 40 artists contributing. And every year we would just do these print runs that would raise, however much money to pay the artists and to fund the print run and to keep everything going until the next year. And that was a lot of fun for a long time.
How long did you do that for?
About 5 years, 6 years. Yeah, there were 5 runs.
So how long would you say you were drawn? I know it's since you were a kid, but like, do you recall when you're like, I'm going to take this serious?
Yeah, I saw a newspaper clipping of a little cartoon, and I was like, I want to do that. I have to do that.
How old were you?
Like 26.
Oh, okay. How many years did you put yourself out there? Like, how many years did you perfect the craft until you started taking these gigs? Let's say before Lepe the Leopard calls you and says, "Hey, draw this mascot," which I tried to look on Google and could not find.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find him. I'll show you later. Probably like 1 to 2 before I was actually taking contracts. There's nothing to stop you from taking contracts. You're likely going to get terrible contracts at the outset, unless you kind of know what to look for, or your portfolio is just really up to snuff out the gate, or you're just that good. You're going to be doing kind of nickel and dime freelance jobs. Unless you play the network game and you end up with a studio position, which is really hard to grab, especially these days. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing illustration, odds are pretty good you're probably also doing like graphic design, and so I would do a lot of those as well. I would illustrate playbills for like bar none musical performance. I did a lot of storyboarding for, those laundry detergent commercials where you see like the laundry detergent molecules busting up germs on
I do remember that.
close up of thread. Yeah, I would storyboard that kind of stuff a lot. It was horrible. Yeah, so that's the kind of work that exists out there. I did architectural rendering for like an interior design studio, things like that.
How long
it's all
did
over
this go on for? You're still doing
everything. Not really, no. I did a shadow map pretty recently. Everything, probably, I'd say about 8 years. But in that time, I was getting a lot better. I was doing a lot more of the work that I wanted to do, as opposed to the work that I felt like I had to do. I was spending a lot of time getting to know other artists. I was learning a lot. I was working on personal projects that were, filling my bucket a bit more, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like you're just sitting on your thumbs waiting for opportunity to fall in your lap. I had the privilege of being able to do those things, being able to practice, able to not hustle from bad storyboard contract to bad storyboard contract.
But
not that I don't love storyboarding in general, but
But while you go through that, when it clearly, I'd imagine in your mind, it's like, this isn't what I want to do long term, but this is how I get my foot in the door. How do you continue to remind yourself, okay, this is progressing? Is it more just you really do like the craft? I'm trying to think of anyone that might watch this in the future when we're huge, and they go, okay, like I just started. Like, what do you do to remind yourself when you're like grinding of what it could turn into? Because you've been an art director in like multiple studios, right? Where you have like an art team.
Yeah.
So what did you do in the roughing it time to remind yourself this, or tell yourself?
Well, I'm the kind of person who really likes learning, and so even at my lowest, I would try to find opportunities to learn, to work with other artists, and ask stupid questions, and audit things like painting drama courses and stuff like that, or smarter art studio courses, things like that. I was like in the pilot program online for the Los Angeles Academy of Figurative Arts. It was like their first time trying online courses. It was really weird, but it was a really cool experience. So I would like put myself out there even when you're not seeing the financial return on that. And again, I say that from a position of privilege. I had the ability to do that. Not everyone does, and that's not something you can do. You can't just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make financial problems go away. But the best advice I would give to anybody is, first of all, stick with it for a baseline threshold amount of time. Say it's 6 months. Say it's less than that. Say it's 2 months. And if you commit to some kind of regimen, whether it's 15 minutes a day, an hour a day, it shouldn't really come down to how much time you spend per se, but it is a good way to start. Then after those 2 months are done, or 6 months, whatever it is, you look back at some benchmark that you've made for yourself, and you'll see how far you've actually come. Because it's really easy to lose sight of that in the day-to-day. It's really easy to feel like you're not progressing when you actually are a lot.
And would you make that benchmark a result that you're after, or more of like, hey, I want to work on line work in that time? Does that make sense? Like, is it a result of like, oh, I landed my first contract, or would it be more of like in the craft itself?
I would say in the craft itself, because contracts, when you start conflating contracts with your ability, that's a really easy road to start badly abusing yourself on, because you're never going to get the kind of contracts that you feel like you're worth until maybe ever. And that's not at all a fault of you.
Slap to the face what you're giving me right now.
There's just so many other factors, from luck to timing to your ability to market yourself, which is not really what artists sign up for, but still end up having to do.
Yeah.
What
are your recommendations for, because like I wanted to ask, but I'm like, I hope he doesn't take offense to it. When I think of the artist, I think of the person that's going to want to lean more that creative, quote unquote, creative focus, do the drawing. Probably you use the term like not the one that wants to network or to market themselves. Like, what are ways that you can slowly practice that and enjoy it in the beginning? I know you probably like not with all your heart, but you're like, okay, it's not like I'm at least willing to do it. Like,
I mean, find your niche, find the stuff that resonates with you, and find other people with whom it resonates as well. For me, fantasy art was a big one, and so whether that's like Dungeons and Dragons communities, which I still have only played once at a company event,
like a day,
whether it's Dungeons, yeah, it's really weird. But whether it's Dungeons and Dragons communities or comic art communities, where independent creators are just working on their stuff and showing everybody what they're working on and how their stuff is coming along. Don't be a fly on the wall. Put yourself out there in safe spaces where you can get good feedback, actionable feedback, and try your best to identify what feedback you should integrate. There's probably going to be some feedback you shouldn't, but that's part of the process. You figure out what you do need to listen to and what you don't.
How do you know? How do you know? Just by sometimes you got to listen to bad feedback and be like, and then work on it, and then it finishes. You're like, wow, this sucked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That definitely happens. You'll definitely find bad feedback, but finding and listening to quality feedback, getting into the habit of identifying it correctly, And even better, getting into the habit of giving it is a
Mm-hmm.
huge just booster to the kind the how active of a consumer you are, and therefore how informed of a creator you can.
It's you cut out a little bit, but it's so interesting because a lot of what you're saying I would probably give a similar answers as like as I try to perfect the art of telling a story, right? It's or
Yeah.
even coaching people to build their programs, which is what I do in my 9 to 5 job. It's like go follow like-minded individuals or go join like-minded groups. One, because you can get in there and add value, get in there and ask questions. You could also learn how their messaging works because it could be something that works for you to build your
Hmm.
your platform, myself included with storytelling. But also, I think the biggest thing it's like how the social algorithm works is that's the stuff I want to see on my social media. Like when I scroll through my social media, it's anime theories from storytelling and how authors and mangaka have set up like villains and good guys, and I get to join the chat. Like those are the digital conversations I'm having every day, rather than like just as me personally, oh, that vacation looks awesome, or oh, they're so cute, like, or oh, here's my political thought on the mat. Like I don't, none of that is me. So when I go to
Yeah.
my social, like when I go to my socials, I want that algorithm to work for me. Sounds very similar when someone's starting with drawing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really tough to sort of find tribe in the beginning, because you're just inundated. If you go down that rabbit hole, the first thing you get is amazing piece after amazing piece, and it's really easy to look at that and get put down by it rather than inspired by it.
Yeah, imposter syndrome seeps
um
in.
exactly. And you can't use it as like a litmus test for your own work, especially because all it really means is like the work that you're producing is doesn't yet have something that you're responding to, and so it should be more a call to action to figure out what that is that you're responding to, why you want to see it in your work, if you want to see it in your work, and
Mm.
how to get there. Once you know a thing, you can learn a thing. Once you
It
name
really,
a thing, you can learn a thing, whatever the expression is.
it's interesting of like when you deeply care about something. I think of like going through learning the story craft for an animated series and like reading books on it, Save the Cat right now. And it's like you read something and
Hmm.
you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. How much like the first instinct is you want to beat yourself up because it's like, I care about it so much. How did I not know this? But
Right.
it's this weird shift when it turns into, oh, cool. I can't wait to add this. You know what I mean? Like, did you go through something similar with? Is that kind of what you're saying right now? Like that shift with drawing as well. Like I imagine at first you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna be these. Oh my gosh, how did I not think of that? And
Yeah,
is it now
exactly.
more of like a, oh cool, I can't wait to incorporate that?
Yeah, or figure out how to learn from that. You want to take something of value from it. You want to learn it. It helps you learn a little bit more about yourself. It helps you learn a little bit more about your work, about what you're capable of, and it can really help you work smarter and not harder.
I have another also. Bravo to you for continuing to draw this while you're answering all these questions.
Yeah,
Thanks a
I'm
lot,
not.
jerk Matt. No, one of the things I was saying is it's wild how much more it's coming to life. I will agree that when I see you do like, it seems just like simple, like slow tweaks, and all of a sudden I look at both of them. I'm like, oh, this is way more lifelike than when we started 30 minutes ago. Um, so I think it's awesome. But it also
Thank
leads to
you.
my.
Yeah, it's a
You're welcome.
process.
I like to have a feedback guy there. It also leads to my next question. Going back to, you join a community. Let's say for you, it's a community of artists. When I join a community, it would be like, let's say, a community of anime lovers, story lovers, right?
Hmm.
And in my mind, I'm like, oh, anime. That's something that people it's a bit vulnerable to talk about that you like, because it is like
Yeah.
perceived as nerdy, and you're like, oh, I just want to find my tribe and people that get me. Um, and then you get in them and you're like, oh, my people, we all like the same thing. I'm so excited to have these conversations. And how pretentious and like degrading people can be to others in these groups,
Oh
where it's
yeah.
like anyone that thinks X person can beat this person is an idiot. Have you thought of this, and this? And in my mind, I'm like, the irony that we join these groups looking for like minded people only to then build division within like
Mhm.
minded people. Do you see similarities in the artist world or no? Is just like anime people rude?
No, for sure. There's a lot of that. I mean, there's a whole host of subcultures within that world, and everyone has their own opinions on, I don't want to say the validity of certain subcultures, but definitely they have their own opinions. Let's just leave it at that. Whether that's something like more, you know, tabletop RPGs, that definitely has its own um, stigmas associated with it, or things like, furry art. That's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
big stigma out there. Other people who really really focus on like high degrees of photorealism, like I'll take a photo, take it home, draw a grid over it, and perfectly recreate it in colored pencil. A lot of people are like, why would you do that? Because it doesn't that defeat the purpose of painting? You have the photograph.
Mm-hmm.
um, and you're talking about places like Facebook where you have 10 people, you'll have 12 opinions.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes. I don't think the art world is in any way inundated from that. No.
Yeah. How do you um I'm curious like what you do to interact, right? Because there's a bunch of things you could do mentally, right? Where you hear someone else say something about and you're like, okay, let me remind myself. Just you almost internal dialogue. But that external dialogue to like go into something ready for a potential community like that. Is there certain things that you'll do? So I'll give an example if it doesn't make sense. Like I Matt makes fun of me for this, but I found recently it really helps me in these like anime groups where I'm like either giving value on the story or asking questions. Is I call myself like the master of context. Like I'll be like, hey, totally understand how someone could feel otherwise. Also, love that we all enjoy anime. That being said, I'm curious if you know, like, does it feel like it's overdoing it? Like everyone's always like, "Oh, you don't have to say it," but in my opinion, I'm like, I think I fucking do have to say it, or we're gonna get other answers. That's what I'll be like added context to like help with like just interacting in groups like that. Is there anything you found that helps you? Like interact with like-minded authors again, like saying it for someone that's thinking of starting to get into networking themselves more in the
Yeah.
art world.
I mean, a thick skin helps. If you don't have one, you should work on developing one. If for no other reason, then a craft like art does call for a lot of feedback, some of which can be frank, or even if it isn't, it's on stuff that is very personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's your work, it's your personal expression, it's something very uniquely you and your voice, and to have someone offer you, critique on it, can it be an inherently hurtful thing, even if it's good critique, and even if they're not trying to be hurtful but helpful. So a thick skin definitely helps. As for like ways to mitigate mentality, you, you sound better equipped in that regard.
Yeah. You cut out a little bit there, but I think I said ways to mitigate. What I heard is ways to mitigate. No, I don't have anything, Dillon. You sound better equipped for it. Wow. Okay.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
what are practices you do to deal with my uh, critiques of work at times? What helps you there, Evan?
Oh, I just stopped listening.
What? No, that makes sense. That makes
No.
sense.
No. Dylan has great. He is essentially creative director here, and he's got great input and great insights. I know where my domain starts and where it ends, and I try to know where his does as well. I don't expect him to really give me input on brush economy, but he can certainly tell me, no, that doesn't really look like something this character would do. So there's a time and a place, and you need to sort of parse feedback and to determine how it's meaningful, what it's meaningful for, and what you should listen to and what you shouldn't.
It is interesting too. Creative director sounds better than fool, so I might start using that a little bit more. No, I won't. I'll still use fool. Is there? Would you say there's areas? Because you're right. I'm never gonna give you feedback on. Oh, actually, like the values here don't look right, or like just doesn't. I would use the term shading.
You could. There's nothing to say you wouldn't see something and I don't, but I would also weight that differently than if Casey did it.
Are there areas, right? Because I think sometimes the challenge that I have is like, Evan's incredible at drawing. He's and intellectual with what you do. So I take your thoughts into account on almost everything. Do you feel there's areas of what we talk about, whether as a business or as a story, where you're asking questions that you're like, oh, Dillon should weight this the way that I weight if he brings up shading and values to me? But I do want to ask, you know what I mean? Like where you're kind of like easing into like a different pool. Is there any area like you see that? Does that make sense?
I mean, sure, yeah, sure. You open the floor to, comments and questions about the TEDx talks. And, that's not my area by any stretch, but I tried to volunteer some thoughts there. And yeah, I expect that, you take whatever expertise I do or don't have there into account.
Yeah.
Same with anything else. I mean, you know your story better than I do.
Yeah. Interesting.
Even if I read all of it.
Yeah. It is interesting because it's like, even I was chatting about that recently, and you bring it up, I'm like, damn, like it's easy for me to go on the line of too humble or which is almost timid. And then I'm like, oh yeah, any question Evan asks here, because I'm used to being like, anything Evan draws, I'm taking his word for anything Evan like talks about on this creative standpoint. I'm to like take that same mindset. It's cool hearing on that side of it. And to know that you're still crossing over to ask those questions to challenge, which should encourage me to do the same with you. Interesting. This was a question I actually asked in a text. So it's more like logistical update. How long do you think this, if we take into account of 2 dedication pages, let's say, we're going to have that last page in the children's book of the parents talking, or the parents speaking to each other, kind of reciting that limerick. How many pages do you think this children's book's going to turn out to be?
I think after this, I think it's in 20.
Ooh, say that all.
Not counting things like interior. I'll give you the exact number after this, but I think it's in the realm of 18 to 20.
Okay.
Not including stuff like, interior cover matter.
And when you count a page, is it a full page spread both sides, or is it 1 page, 2 page?
1 page, 2 page.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Man, really? 18, 20, you think? I thought it'd be more.
I think so.
Okay.
I'll check after this and let you know. But
man, it's crazy how realistic this is turning into, man.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm trying not to noodle it too much. There's a lot that still needs to happen, but yeah, I mean, you can kind of get an idea of what's happening, where it's going, and how we get from here to a fuller painting.
Is there a reason for you that the picture starts here and not with the callings in the background? Is it like you're like, I just want to get Keith because I know Keith more and Becc done first?
Yeah, a little bit. So there's an element of, easier to warm up on, shall we say. But also, yeah, I think with the callings in the background, given that they're kind of spectral, but they're sort of extensions of the callings in the foreground, there's a lot more freedom to be more crazy with color choices and how I treat them. So it's not the most grounded place to start the piece, so I have an idea of like what the color range is going to look like and things like that. I don't know. It's super chunky right now, which will change
What does
hopefully.
chunky
But
mean for it?
just like there's the brush strokes are super visible, which I don't mind, but in the it still needs to be smoothed over. Like some of these color shifts, color invasions need to be navigated a little bit more thoughtfully, and that'll happen,
Yeah.
over time. Other times it's like, I don't know, Becc feels right,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
I'm excited for Becc, man. His parent. I mean, Chris had already dropped in, but even them seeing the picture of I'm really excited for the spin you put on of uh, being able to tell just by the picture when the kids are in their imagination and when they're in reality, like just with that soft tint. Or what I don't know what you would call that tint that you put on with Becc and Took, which is the name of his calling, by the way. Yeah, right under it actually. What's
It's
that
more
tint
just, I
called?
mean, Matt said it perfectly, punk rock.
Yeah, punk rock.
um it's really just kind
I
of
said
pushing the.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Will that be the same thing?
Yeah, sure. It's just kind of pushing that what's it called? Suspension of disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
The colors do not make sense and are not expected to make sense, and they don't really work with the rules that have been laid out by the other pictures that do not take place in imagination. So, I don't know.
What made you with the color? Speaking of the colors, right? We have very much like a blue green with Took here, and then
Hmm.
with we're calling him Yo Yo, but it's going to be spelled JoJo, Jojo for the duck. What made you choose those tones? Because I feel like blue green similar, but like with the duck, it's like tan purple. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
What made
it's
you
going to
choose
be
those?
pulling more orange, more into that deep purple. I know that this image, Keith is his hair is the wrong color, but
Who cares?
um, yeah, but the duck, there's going to be a lot of that orange and indigo
Yeah.
informing their color choice when they're larger.
Is there a reason you chose those colors?
So yeah, is there a what?
Is there a reason you chose those colors? I love them, but they're like a
Trying to pull a lot of
different color scheme.
yeah. We're trying to pull mallard, which has a lot of these like really bold color changes in its feathers. But I wanted to avoid the green. I wanted to sort of complement Keith in the same way that Beck's calling complements him as far as color scheme.
Oh,
So I wanted them to feel in the same family. So we're basically red or blue or this kind of fallish orange kind of color for Becc and company, and then the blue green teal for Becc and his water tiger.
coming into fall sounds pretty awesome. I know Keith's gonna love it because that's his favorite word. Let's see if I can even. Sometimes what I'll do when I'm working from my office is I'll just say it, and no matter where he's at, he'll say it back. Duck, duck,
Fall or duck?
duck, duck, duck. Nothing. But it'll be hilarious when I'm just like working. And I'm like hear him in another room or like just downstairs, and I yell it, and then you'll just hear him say it back. But that like it's just constant ducks. No, it'll be ducks that he likes. So speaking of, because he said time, and we're coming at time. You had done a bit of pre work coming into this, going into some
Yeah.
right a little bit of the quick sketch. How long? Oh, by the way, if you could, when you're all finished, send me this time lapse would be
Sure.
awesome. Oh, are you giving him a little mohawk?
A little bit.
Let's go. How long did that time
So yeah,
lapse
I
take?
think this was about where we came in.
Yeah. How long did that
This is
time lapse?
uh probably about 20 minutes. So I was putting out a work fire at the same time.
Just guy, dude. And then start to finish.
Otherwise, I would have really wanted to start from like a more solid drawing.
Yeah. Start to finish, what would you say? A portrait like this, how long does it tend to take you, knowing that you're multitasking with me as you draw this, right? And knowing that you have perfected this craft for a while, how long would you say something like this tends to take you?
It would probably be in a decent place after, 2 hours. After 3 hours, I think I could pass it off, and any more than that would just give me more opportunity to make it better.
Yeah. I'm super excited. And for anyone watching, we will make sure and put this in our group so you can see it. And then if you backed the Kickstarter, enough people backed that we actually achieved this tier. Thank you so much for helping support what we're doing. You will receive a signed copy of this poster, physical, with your rewards. That being said, as well, if you're watching this, we are sending out surveys in the next week. We just did a smoke test where it goes to 10% of our backers to make sure everything's working, fix any potential glitches, and then we're going to send out the entire surveys probably the first of next week or the first Monday. So make sure you're looking in your emails for a survey to fill out. Shipping and handling was added on in the Kickstarter itself, so you won't have to worry about anything there. But if you'd like to do any add-ons, hardcover is now an add-on. Hardcover book is an add-on. Maybe you want other comics as part of an add-on. Maybe you want more soft cover books of Becc and Ceith. Feel free to add that on as well to your order. They're great for Christmas gifts, birthday presents, Saturday gifts, whatever, baby showers. We really appreciate the support. Look for that. Like I said, next week we'll remind you in the group. Thank you so much for watching. Evan, thanks for taking some time today to hang out with just me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun.
Super fun. We will see everyone potentially in 2 weeks. I will not be here in 2 weeks. I'll be in San Diego. So I don't know if I'll be able to make this one. But we appreciate y'all. We love you. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for following Unfound Adventures.
Bye.